Fuck all of you people. So I killed Dakota. Mm-hmm. Or you're Dakota now. It's one of those two.
I can be Dakota. I can put on a little hillbilly accent and talk about puzzles if you want.
Yeah.
I was on a ghost bed and...
I would prefer that you don't do any of those things. Yeah, it's bad enough when it's organic. This is something this show is going to be about, something I saw on Twitter. This dude that I've run into a couple of times and a bunch of my buddies have worked with, Gabriel Nirana. It's a former State Department guy, National Security Council guy. And it seems like a lot of people in the administration, you probably remember when Trump started saying stupid shit from time to time about foreign policy, and people inside of the administration would leak like, hey, we don't support that.
Right.
And I doubt it's to undermine him. It's more so to let other world leaders know, like, hey, we're not actually doing this.
Right.
It's kind of like that episode. I don't know if you've seen the show Space Force.
It seemed too on the nose for me to want to watch.
It's a bit much, yeah. But there's one episode where China runs over the flag on the moon, the American flag on the moon. And so they want to retaliate, and the Secretary of Defense wants to nuke China or some shit. But, you know, it's happening now with Biden. No surprise. I mean, it was more surprising to me after Afghanistan to see all those state and defense people standing up for what had happened there.
Yeah.
And then 2 weeks later, they were like, oh, actually, we did tell them that this was happening. Like, it just took, maybe there's a 2-week delay on that service. I don't know. But now there are people inside of the Biden administration, on the state side especially, State Department side, that are starting to leak things because it's getting out of hand with some of the shit he's doing. Now, I just sprung this on you today.
Minutes ago, because somebody chickened out.
Yeah, Jeremy Peters looked the show up, realized that I wasn't just going to fucking agree with him, and ran away because he's an MSNBC contributor.
Yeah, well, to be fair, you pay me to agree with you, so it's...
Yeah, I do that. I don't know what to tell you. Anyways, this is going to be a good one. Frightening, maybe. The premise of this is Biden appears to be trying to reinstitute the nuclear deal with Iran that he worked on and Obama did. What year was that? 14?
Somewhere
15?
Around there. Which he's wanted to do from the jump. I mean, he mentioned that, I think, in the campaign.
Yeah, I mean, why wouldn't we want to give them $100 billion and a bunch of their terrorists back? Fuck it, man. I mean, we're going to need their oil now, apparently. Excuse me. So let's go through some of this. It's called, the thing they're working on right now is called the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, which is a completely unnecessary fucking phrase. What is it? Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. Why? Just call it the fucking plan.
I don't. That's fucking a lot. That's the nuclear deal?
JCPOA.
Yeah.
It's a 15-year long agreement reached in 2015 during talks in Vienna between the UN Security Council, P5+1, which is not Power 5 conferences in football, but the Security Council's permanent members plus whomever the away team is for that year.
Yeah.
Like every year there's one country that gets to be on the Security Council.
Is it just one?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. I know there's I know there's a couple rotating. I do actually, this name makes sense to me on one level. And that is it's so boring.
Yeah.
That you would overlook. Like you'd be like, I'm not reading that.
Yeah, that could be true.
I'm not reading what's in that.
Now, obviously, Iran is involved because it's about the Iran nuclear program. Formal negotiations for the JCPOA, can we call it that?
JCPOA.
Yeah.
Yeah, why not?
That almost sounds racist, but I don't know. I don't even know why. Began with the adoption of the Joint Plan of Action in 2013, which applied short-term freeze on Iran's nuclear program in exchange for alleviating some of the economic sanctions against them. The JPOA eventually led to another agreement in April 2015, the Iranian Nuclear Deal Framework. Again, framework is just a completely unnecessary word. That's like a fucking. It's like a somebody in college, sophomore year, shitty major, but they're having to do some literature classes and they have to add extra words to their paper.
Right.
That's what that is. They're just trying to boost their word count here. So that limited Iran's ability to enrich and process nuclear materials, allowed UN to monitor Iran's nuclear program, so on and so forth.
Go in and inspect whatever. Was it a UN inspector?
Yes. UN,
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So same with
we
Hans Bricks.
Yeah. So the JCPOA was agreed upon in July of 2015 and reduced Iran's stockpile of low-enriched uranium by 97% for 15 years, along with placing 2/3 of their centrifuges in storage. What? So we were just punting?
I guess. This deal was always like deeply confusing to me. Like they're still allowed to use nuclear power.
Yeah.
And then we're just like, don't do anything else?
It also limited Iran to enriching uranium at only their Natanz plant. I don't know what that word is. Limiting research and development work on enrichment to that facility. Prohibited Iran from building any new enrichment facilities for 15 years. Allowed Iran to rebuild the Arak heavy water research reactor, in support of peaceful nuclear research. A heavy water reactor is required for the enrichment of uranium.
Yeah.
Just for those who don't know. And let's see. Oh, okay, there we go. It ensured all spent fuel be sent out of Iran, so they can't use it for dirty bombs, I guess. Export excess heavy water to the international market. Prevent the Fordo facility from enriching or researching uranium enrichment for 15 years. Allow the IAEA, which is the International Agency of something, energy.
Maybe. God, there's just a lot of letter organizations.
Yeah. Allows the IAEA inspections in perpetuity for as long as Iran remains party to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Agreement. As a result of the JCPOA, the breakout time, the amount of time it would take Iran to produce a single nuclear weapon, was increased from 2 to 3 months to a minimum of 1 year. So, I don't get it.
What?
We have this deal for 15 years, but it only extends 9 months, the time it would take them to produce a nuclear weapon.
Right. So they could still produce one potentially, but it would just take longer. I guess maybe the only thinking that is we could intercede somehow. I don't, this deal's always been really fucking confusing me. By the way, apparently the Israeli government, as of 2 months ago, believes Iran is 1 to 2 years away from being able to produce a nuclear weapon.
Yeah, they're probably right about that. Let's see. Following the verification of Iran's compliance, sanctions against Iran would be either terminated or suspended. So it was like, you get a smiley face sticker if you do this, and we don't sanction your fucking oligarchs anymore.
Here's some Pepsi.
U.S. sanctions against Iran related to human rights abuses, missiles, and support for terrorists are not affected by the agreement. That's a very key thing to remember. U.S. sanctions against Iran related to human rights abuses, missiles, and support for terrorists are not affected by the agreement. The JCPOA, the 2015 version of this, the stipulations that would allow for sanctions to be removed from Iran, provided they behave correctly, didn't include any of those things. Those sanctions would stay in place.
The sanctions on that stuff would stay in place?
Yeah, like
or they wouldn't sanction it?
No, the sanctions would stay in place.
Oh, okay,
so
okay.
The Ayatollah's holdings that he came about through dubious methods. I can't remember this fucker's name. We'll get to it later, but one of the guys that was involved in the 83 Beirut bombing, number of other guys.
Yeah.
In the event of Iran violating the agreement, any of the P5+1 can invoke a, quote, snapback provision, under which sanctions go back into place immediately. After 15 years, many provisions of the JCPOA will expire, including many of the restrictions placed on Iran's enrichment. Now, one of the first things that Trump did was executive order this thing out, right?
Right. Did he executive ordered us out of it?
Maybe, I don't know.
I think other countries were still in, but I mean, it became pretty toothless, I think, once we left. I think it might have been similar to the exit of the Paris Accord.
Okay. So the Iran Nuclear Agreement Review Act is a bill passed in 2015, which gives Congress the right to review any agreement reached by the P5+1 talks with Iran. On October 13th, 2017, Trump announced that he would not make the certification required by the INARA due to his view that Iran violated the spirit of the deal.
They kind of live in violation of the spirit of the deal.
Yeah, and about 2 years later, he fucking muck-ducked Soleimani. So
right.
It's like, let's see, Trump called on Congress and the international partners to address the perceived flaws in the JCPOA and ensure Iran could never obtain nuclear weapons. In May of 2018, the U.S. withdrew from JCPOA after Trump claimed he would negotiate a better deal. So I guess he unilaterally pulled the country out of it, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it was all done by the executive branch, right? I mean, it wasn't in the first place.
Yeah.
So he didn't pull out he didn't like nix a congressional order or like a bill or anything like that. He just did presidential foreign policy shit, basically.
Yeah. 1 year after withdrawing, the U.S. reimposed several sanctions on Iran, leading Iran to take countermeasures, including halting sales of excess enriched uranium and heavy water to other countries. Iran also said they would continue to enrich uranium beyond the agreed-upon threshold of 3.67% if the other parties involved in the agreement did not fulfill their duties to allow them to benefit economically from the agreement. Iran made the decision to resume enrichment after all major European companies abandoned doing business with them out of fear of reprisal from the U.S. That's kind of happening to Russia right now, although they've got they'll just fall into their lovers' arms in China. They're not worried about us. Okay, here it is. So in 2020, Trump claimed that the U.S. remained, a participant in the JCPOA despite having formally withdrawn in 2018 in an effort to convince the UN Security Council to reimpose sanctions on Iran for breaching the agreement after the U.S. withdrew. Also in 2020, the U.S. ambassador to the UN, Kelly Craft, defended the U.S. goal of restoring sanctions against Iran by saying, quote, history is replete with tragedies of appeasing regimes such as this one that for decades have kept its own people under its thumb. The Trump administration has no fear in standing and limited company on this matter. I only regret that other members of the Security Council have lost their way and now find themselves in the company of terrorists. That's a bold statement.
I mean, who on the Security Council isn't in the company of terrorists? But like two of the 5, 6 people in there are Russia and China. I don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
Like, what are they?
Yeah.
And I mean, Iran's part of in the general vicinity of the whole Belt and Road situation, and Russia's just basically down to find any friends they can.
Yeah, they're Russia's kind of like Anthony Scaramucci. They just show up and hang out a while until people realize they're cunts. That dude's been fired from every job he's ever had. After Biden was elected in 2020, he stated his intention to rejoin the Iran nuclear deal despite Naftali Bennett, the new Israeli prime minister, advising against it. In early 2021, talks between the original JICPOA parties took place in Vienna, but were ultimately put on hold due to the election of a new president in Iran. Not that the president of Iran is a thing.
Right.
Being the president of Iran is like being the coach of a team that LeBron James plays for. You know what I mean? Like, you've got no real authority.
Except for the one guy who used to get press all the time. Ahmadinejad?
Ahmadinejad, yeah.
Yeah.
But he's where now?
I don't know. He follows some weird people on Twitter, by the way. And
What weird, like Serena Williams and shit?
No, that would almost be normal. He had a great Twitter, and it was like he followed like some sports teams, like American sports teams, and he was like commenting. Man, he might have commented on like a college football playoff selection or something weird like that.
He's like a huge Texas fan. That's why he's all pissed off all the time. Like, oh, they're going to be back this year.
Yeah.
And every September, and then by fucking October, he's like, I'm going to kill white people. Fuck this. So an agreement to continue negotiations was reached in October of last year. In light of the continued negotiations, Secretary of State Anthony Blinken expressed hope that the talks would be successful, while warning reporters that, quote, the runway we have left is getting shorter and shorter. I assume by that he means that the time they have to negotiate versus the time that it would take Iran to build a bomb is that margin is super slim now.
Yeah.
Right. That's got to be what he's talking about.
Which apparently, according to Israeli intelligence, the Israeli government, it is.
International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA. But anyways, yeah. I mean, Israel's always going to say that. Because it's completely unacceptable for them, for Iran to even have nuclear technology at all. Yeah. Much less a fucking bomb. Nick's wearing Crocs today. Anybody notice?
Oh, he wears them most days.
I think we all need to start wearing Crocs. Do you own a pair of Crocs?
I do not currently.
I'm buying everybody in the office Crocs.
Okay.
Send me your shoe sizes.
Are you picking the colors?
Don't fucking roll your eyes at me, Sean.
I think 10s all around.
No, you're a 10.
And a half.
I'm an 11.
I'm a 9.5.
9.5.
I'm a petite boy.
You have tiny, tiny feet.
Yeah, you're like Deion Sanders now. He's not going to be able to stand up again, right? He got his big toe and his fucking index toe cut off.
What,
Rob
really?
and Sean
On
have
his
the
left
same
foot.
size feet,
Yeah.
and it's sad.
For who?
Rob.
Well, yeah.
No, I don't know. You can still shop in the little boy section.
It's nice. Yeah.
Later. Brittany buys all kinds of fucking child shoes.
Yeah. Shoes for obese 10-year-olds are cheaper than shoes for adults.
What the fuck are we talking about?
Go Kids.
No, not yet. Almost. So Russia's ambassador to the IAEA in Vienna expressed support for Iran's demand that the U.S. not fully withdraw from the JICPOA agreement, saying that their reasoning was, quote, logical and justifiable. At the start of the 7th round of negotiation, now that's a big deal with American politics. It's something I talk about a lot. We govern in 4-year increments.
Right.
So a president makes these deals, and then the people of Iran start being able to do commerce and stuff again, and like, all right, cool, our country's getting a little bit better. The people are getting a little bit more power. Sanctions always hit people first,
right,
before they ever hit the fucking government or industry. And then the next guy comes in and is like, fuck you.
Yeah.
We're not doing this shit. And I don't think people that don't understand American politics have any idea what's happening.
I mean, even if you did fully understand American politics, would that make it any better for you? Really? Like, wouldn't you still be like, God damn it, dude, just...
Effectively, there's no difference.
Yeah.
I guess it just depends on your attitude.
Right.
At the start of the 7th round of negotiations, European, Russian, British, which Russia and Europe or Russia and Britain are both in Europe. European, Russian, British, Chinese, and Iranian negotiators expressed optimism about reviving the agreement, with the European diplomats saying that there's a 70 to 80% of the preliminary deal had already been done. The primary demand made by Iran that negotiators from the West refused to accept was the insistence that U.S. lift all sanctions against them before Iran would agree to scale back their nuclear program to the previously agreed upon restraints. Ultimately, the new proposals made by Iran were deemed to be unacceptable, and Western negotiators saw little chance of success unless Iran agreed to change its position. Sounds like the Major League Baseball situation now. Negotiations continued through the end of last year, with Russia and China putting diplomatic pressure on Iran to reverse its stance.
Specifically, that they no longer they back down first, not the U.S.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Russia and China want Iran to allow sanctions against oligarchs and business people that are fucked up in Iran.
Yeah.
Basically. Which is weird because we're doing that to Russian and Chinese people too.
Right. Well, especially Russians.
Yeah. On February 20th of this year, 250 members of Iranian parliament issued a statement urging current President Ibrahim Raisi to comply with the requirements put forth by the West at the beginning of March, which is last week. A senior official and spokesperson for the U.S. State Department stated that an agreement was close to being reached. Reviving the JCPOA has become a priority for the Biden administration, as Iran could add roughly 1 million barrels of oil per day to the global market, significantly reducing the cost of crude oil and reducing the overall threat of nuclear war in the region. The current talks being held in Vienna are being mediated by the original European members of the agreement, as well as Russia and China. So that's the first thing that really caught my attention about this, is that while Russia is in the middle of an invasion of Ukraine, they're still in Vienna negotiating to not give Iran too much military power.
Right.
And I don't know how it affects Russia for 1 million barrels of Iranian oil to hit the market per day. I don't know how that affects them.
I don't know either, especially because I think the Biden administration announced 6 days ago that the world would be releasing 60 million reserve barrels, 30 from the U.S. and 30 from fuck knows where. I don't know if Iran factors into that or not. But it is interesting that Russia's kind of there, like quasi negotiating against itself from another position.
Yeah, that's pretty fucking weird.
That's some 4D chess, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, granted, they have Europe bent over a barrel right now, quite literally.
Yeah.
But I don't know what the distribution is of natural gas versus oil.
So for me, I always assumed that it was that Russia, as far as energy goes, had them way more fucked on gas than oil. Liquid natural gas seems to be what Russia really owns Europe on.
Yeah, that's my understanding too, and that's why I think, right now, Russia is basically in control of Donetsk and Luhansk, which are both they're both there on the eastern side of Ukraine.
Those were the two parts that Putin said, these are new countries now.
Yeah, and those are two of the parts that had the majority, 70% of the people there are pro-Russian.
Right.
Right. It was 70-30. But Luhansk is I think it's the largest natural gas producing region in all of Ukraine that's currently operational. And then people were asking about Chernobyl and why that was getting fucked with. Apparently there's an untapped reservoir of fucking natural gas there as well. So that's what this all seems to be about based on what Russia's doing. Man, so maybe you're right. I mean, it could be just that simple, that they're going to lean into the natural gas and let everybody else fuck around with oil. Because in that region, other than Ukraine and Russia, it's not coming out of the ground.
Yeah.
So, what else are you going to fucking do? And we're not going to put a natural gas pipeline from fucking Pennsylvania to Germany.
We just sent a huge fucking fleet over there, I think it was right before the invasion of Ukraine started, that we were trying to, we became at least for a moment, the biggest exporter of natural gas to Europe. We overtook Russia because we knew this was coming, or at least like in the weeks leading up, we knew it was coming. But it still was not a good enough ratio, right? Like it's still like if Russia cut off its natural gas, which comes directly in a pipe to Western Europe, as opposed to ours coming on a bunch of fucking boats, like they're still fucked. Like we basically, I don't remember the numbers, but it was like America is now providing, 30 or like 40% of the natural gas, but Russia's still like 35 or like it's still so much that it'd be untenable to have it fully cut off.
It's also got to be way more inefficient cost-wise to move gas across the fucking ocean.
Yeah, 100%.
Let's see. Let's do some ads. So speaking of moving gas, that's not really a good segue.
If you like Dutch ovening your loved ones or yourself.
A Dutch oven is an actual device. It's a tool. It's a fucking like Le Creuset fucking cast iron coated fucking thing that you cook in. God damn it!
I got a
What I
Dutch
use it
oven.
for.
And now every time I'm like, oh yeah, you just get a Dutch oven and you do this, they're like, oh, shut the fuck up. Fucking Jesse did it to me the other day. No, they're really good to cooking. It's cast iron.
Yeah.
Stupid bastards.
It's a great thing to confit something in.
It is, yeah.
I decided I'm not going to fry a turkey for Thanksgiving next year. That's too redneck. I'm going to confit the turkey.
Do you break it down first?
Yeah, I think you need to break it down.
So you've got to get rid of the tendons, but keep the fat.
Yeah.
To confit. Or you can add, I don't know if you can, what kind of fat would you add to turkey? You couldn't use duck or rabbit fat. It would be too much, probably. Maybe duck fat.
You could do
would work,
duck fat, I think would be fine. Or honestly, you can even just confit in oil, basically. It's just
but that's like, come on, man.
Yeah.
That's not the way it's done. Don't be an asshole.
you just go Texas and use beef tallow or beef fat or whatever the fuck.
Yeah, I'm sure that's what fucking Joe Rogan does for Thanksgiving. It's like there's a DMT pen and a fucking big plate of beef tallow cooked turkey. Vegetables are for queers, man. We eat that shit around here. Ghost Bed. Right now, Ghost Bed is offering 40% off bundles where you get a mattress and an adjustable base. So Brittany and I just got back from Florida this morning. Definitely packed an extra bag and put our pillows in there. Mm-hmm. I'm not sleeping. I will never sleep on another hotel pillow again unless I'm blacked out. Which means I ended up in a hotel because I was blacked out.
Right. I mean, I usually my head hits a hotel pillow drunker more often than sober.
Yeah, I mean,
but you still wake up
that's
feeling
true.
like shit.
Yeah, I mean, my neck's all fucked up.
Right.
I can't do that shit.
No, that's inverse correlation, Rob. You're drunk because you already know you're staying at a hotel.
Oh, that's true.
It doesn't matter. The effect is the same, right? He didn't imply that he was drinking to get through the pillow situation.
Yeah, no, that's quite the opposite.
He's just a drunk piece of shit.
Yeah.
That's not correlation at all. That's just a fucking fact. We love Ghost Bed. They've been a loyal sponsor for 5 years. They got great deals on all their shit, and their shit is great. Sheets, pillows, adjustable base, mattress, the fucking heavy blanket. Everything's good. I like all of it. I've got so much of their stuff. Maybe I'm going to start fucking reselling. Just like trick Rich Bernstein and sending me free shit. Then he sees it on fucking eBay and shit. Like, hey, dude, can you stop selling the beds, please?
You're really undercutting our business.
Yeah. 40% off if you get a bundle package, which is a mattress and an adjustable base and anything else you add to that. For everything else, 30% off. Use the code DRINKINBROS at ghostbed.com/DRINKINBROS.
And that's for as big or small. Could be a pillow, could be 3 mattresses.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Richard Ryan used it for... he bought beds for all the rooms in his house and his guest house.
Yeah.
It's like $12,000 worth of shit. But it would have been more. Well, actually, it was $12,000 before the discount. But yeah, good deal. Go to ghostbed.com/DrinkinBros. Next up, we don't really have anything. So go check out Hard as Fuck Seltzer.
Yes.
HardAFSeltzer.com. It's pretty much the best thing you're ever going to put in your mouth that isn't on somebody else's body.
I've enjoyed your posts shaming people into drinking it.
Which one was that? Oh,
just your stories on Instagram.
That's not me, though. All I'm doing is I'm just a messenger. And Lázaro Lopez is the Messiah.
Yeah.
There. If you're afraid of that level of manliness, then stick to your fucking Coors Light, buddy.
Yeah.
But if you want to be able to do roundhouse kicks and grow mullets, then you need to be drinking this shit. That's just the way it is.
Have you? Are you still on whatever your original favorite flavor is? Or are you kind of like, I drink a lot of that now. I'm moving on, kind of grooving into something new.
Yeah, I've been drinking more of the shortcake lately. Although it's probably my favorite now, but I still like the lemon lime.
Yeah, I'm still on peach fully. Although blue raspberry is coming around on me pretty good.
I'm just not a fucking blue raspberry guy, really. I think maybe if I think I'm going to mix the blue raspberry and the lemon lime together.
Ooh.
I think that's going to be good. I'm going to drink one of those later today, actually, as soon as we're done with this stupid-ass show. Tired of this. Now, I was into this show, and now I'm thinking about the booze, and I'm ready for it to be over. What are you looking at?
I was just going to comment on the booze and whether you wanted a 50-50 blend or a different proportion.
I will start with a 50-50 blend, and then I'll adjust accordingly. Right?
I think the blue raspberry has a stronger flavor, so you could probably go like 75-25.
We'll see.
Yeah.
I'll cross that bridge when I come to it. Maybe I'll fill it up when it's halfway done with just blue raz. What?
I just feel like a peach shortcake would be good as well.
No. Peach strawberry shortcake? Why would that be good?
Just like a...
You're doing too much. Just put the mic down.
Yeah.
This is weed. Now, you've either smoked too much of it or not enough. Get yourself right, because that was a dumb thing to say. All right. Anyways, hardasfuckseltzer, hardafseltzer.com. Go ahead and buy it, drink it, tell us if you like it. If you don't, we don't really care, because we like it.
Yeah, we'll still be drinking.
We made it for us. I don't give a shit about you.
It's really the best. Like it's not going to fail, but it's the best business you can have that fails, because then you're just stuck with 100,000 cans of booze you get to drink.
Yeah, I'm sure our collective loved ones are going to be thrilled about that. Like, hey, we had a rough day at work. Sales were not good, so we're going to have to drink 80 cans of this 8% seltzer tonight. Sorry. Them's the rules.
Just can't afford the warehouse space.
Yeah. Hey, it is kind of expensive. So back to this shit show. We've laid all the framework for all this, the ground level stuff, like what's happened up till now. So let's get into it. What's been going on over the last couple of months? The Biden administration has seemingly been excluding Congress from the deal, preventing it from performing the oversight mandated by the Iran Nuclear Agreement Review Act of 2015. The Biden administration has promised to follow the law, but Congress has yet to be presented with the details of the deal or ask for any kind of approval. And this conversation has been going on for 2 months now, and Congress has yet to be addressed. Even as attempts are made to isolate Moscow in response to the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the Biden administration continues to use Russia as a key interlocutor in the negotiations. You want to look that one up too? Delco?
Interlocutor. How involved was Congress in the 2015 and then Trump's withdrawal in 2017 as opposed to now? Like, I know there's the Iran Nuclear Agreement Review Act of 2015, but it's the Agreement Review Act?
Yeah, but
how involved were they before they reviewed it, I guess?
I can't imagine that there was much involvement in the Trump part, because he just signed an EO to leave the agreement.
Right.
As far as Biden, or I guess that would have been Obama Biden at the time, probably didn't have a whole lot of opportunities.
Yeah.
Right? There was only a year and 3 months, I think, left on his term in there. And Congress probably would not have spent that time reviewing something that just went into effect.
Yeah.
Usually you wait a while and then do it. So probably not much so far. It seems like a rule that's never been used.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's there. It's handy if you want to use it, but if it's not, you just let it fucking slide, basically.
Yeah. Republican foreign policy leaders in Congress have criticized the Biden administration's approach, saying the administration is ignoring future security issues and violating the law by not allowing Congress to review the details of the negotiations. That's probably true. Representative Michael McCall, a Republican from Texas, never heard of him, told the Washington Free Beacon that, quote, congressional review of any Iran nuclear deal ensures legislative oversight of any dealings regarding the nuclear program of the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism. If the administration circumvents Congress, that is a blinking red light for the American people that this is a bad deal. Probably right about that. Like, deals made in secret usually. I mean, if it was Trump or, I guess, in reality, Jared Kushner, who negotiated all those Middle East peace deals,
Right.
Doing it, I would have a little bit more faith because they're not pussies. I mean, honestly, Biden's a fucking idiot and a pussy. Iranian officials have insinuated that a deal has almost been reached, regardless of congressional review. Mustafa, what's that name?
Let me look at. I was actually looking up McCall real quick. He might be our representative for this office.
Oh shit!
It stretches all the way from Houston into parts of Austin, outer Houston into parts of Austin.
Interesting.
But I can't get a good zoom in on the map. Whatever the Texas 10th congressional district is. But either way, let me look at that name real quick.
Ours is Chip Roy, at where we live.
Okay. Where you and I live.
Yeah. Or Roger Williams, who I've also never heard of.
Well, it's changing now. Oh, okay. Yes. So McCall is our representative for this office.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Never heard of him. So Mustafa Koshezem, maybe?
Yeah.
And an advisor to Iran's negotiators told the Iranian press that, quote, the U.S. has accepted Iran's conditions to reach an agreement. Mustafa has also claimed that the Ukraine conflict has forced Biden administration to take a less confrontational stance in negotiations and that several EU states have demanded that sanctions on Iran's crude oil be lifted. Now, that is all probably true. Like, the Europe is under a lot of pressure right now to figure out something for energy. Unless Germany turns 3 of those nuclear reactors back on, which I don't know if they're going to do it, they're kind of fucked.
How much power were those 3? It was dumb to turn them off. I've never got could find a good answer on how much power they were providing as opposed to nuclear gas they were importing from Russia.
There probably isn't data on that, but what you would have to look at is from the date that it got switched off, which energy sources rose, right? Mm-hmm. Like how much more natural gas or oil was used.
I know coal rose quite a bit.
Yeah.
Very green of them.
You know what's weird? And when we had that general on, was 6 months ago maybe, he was talking about how China is moving towards green energy and shit. 70% of the energy in China is still coal or wood.
Yeah.
Wood.
Which
is very new coal, I guess.
Right.
Right? Like it's not coal yet.
The funniest thing I ever read about coal, about like green energy negotiations and coal and stuff like that, was essentially that like all the first world or very wealthy countries like the United States, Canada, Western Europe, even Russia and China were like telling the rest of the world, like, all right, we need to get off coal, and like, especially like Africa and South America and smaller East and South Asian countries were like, what?
Like
you all just got rich off coal for the last 200 years using nothing but coal. And now we can't use coal to like lift up ourselves up to your economic level? Like, fuck you.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, whites don't really like giving other people upward mobility. That's kind of on our. If you look on the back of our baseball card,
right,
it says "Don't do that." So, yeah, that's how it is. When people are trapped, it's like being trapped underground or something. You're in a bomb shelter, and everybody who gets out closes the door behind them.
Yeah,
instead of turning and reaching around to grab somebody else to pick them back up. We're a bunch of pieces of shit as a species. So you always hear all the political rhetoric about, oh, they're not being transparent, they're not working with us, and blah, blah, blah. I usually let that stuff pass in one ear and out the other because there's really no... It could be perception or even opinion. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And there's no way to quantify it unless you were there. So what's the point of even talking about it? I mean, I guess it's interesting to speculate sometimes. But when members of the incumbent party's administration especially at the bureaucratic and diplomatic level, start leaking things, then then that's a pretty good validation that what's happening behind the scenes is not good. Like I said, we saw it with Trump a couple times. But the super successful deals that made sense that they were doing,
The Mideast ones?
we didn't hear shit about that until they were done.
No, they pretty much popped up.
Yeah, there were 5 major Middle East peace deals done between us, Israel, and the host country. And you didn't hear shit about that until it was like announced. You're like, oh, what? Sorry, what?
I mean, I'm sure part of that is no one really gives a crap about Kuwait or Djibouti being...
Maybe Kuwait's one of the like fucking 6 richest countries in the entire Middle East.
Right.
And they went after, I called that.
I don't mean that it's not important. I mean that, is that going to get a click?
Is it sexy? I would say, yeah. If it had been Obama negotiating a peace deal, then it would have been sexy to the media, but otherwise not. So the guy I mentioned before, Gabriel Nirana, is a former special advisor for the Secretary's Iran Actions Group, the Secretary of State, and the Trump administration. So he is the, he was for the part of the State Department that was dedicated to dealing with Iran's bullshit. He was the expert. Okay. He recently posted a thread on Twitter that I referred to before, expressing his concerns with the concessions being made during the current negotiations in Vienna. According to him, officials have become so concerned that they have allowed him to publish certain details of the negotiations in hopes that Congress will be convinced to step in and stop the capitulation. In the Twitter thread, Nirana said 3 members of the U.S. negotiating team have left due to concessions being made by the U.S., and that the entire negotiation process has been filtered through a Russian diplomat named Mikhail Ulyanov, which is great. You can definitely trust Russian diplomats.
Right.
With your fucking nuclear security.
With anything. That's been the funniest part of this Brittany Griner thing.
Oh, yeah.
The amount of people I've seen be like, how could she be so stupid to take drugs to the airport? And I was like, well, you're operating under the assumption that that Russia's not lying about it.
Yeah, for sure. Nirana insists that the deal being negotiated in Vienna is a threat to national security, that it is illegal and illegitimate and does not serve U.S. interests in either the short or long term. Robert Malley, M-A-L-L-E-Y, an American attorney, has been leading the negotiations on behalf of the U.S. since the initial 2015 talks that resulted in JCPOA. So he's been on that for 7 years? Mm-hmm. That's weird.
He's kind of, he's like an attorney, but he's like a lifelong diplomat, really. I guess. He's been the special envoy to Iran for this year, basically. And he was the lead negotiator in the last one. And before that, he was just kind of working for international groups, Obama, Clinton administration, blah, blah, blah.
Speaking of that, the Clinton Global Initiative is coming back.
Sick.
Did you guys hear about that?
No.
Well, what does it do?
It funnels money.
Okay.
All right.
The fuck you think it does?
I have no idea.
As a result of the current negotiations, the U.S. has promised to lift sanctions on some Iranian terrorists, which, again, the fucking agreement says you cannot do. I mentioned that. That's why I put that in bold before.
Right.
Leading officials. So the U.S. has promised to lift sanctions on some Iranian terrorists, leading officials in the development of WMDs, and sanctions placed on the IRGC, or Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. The IRGC is a branch of the Iranian military intended to protect the country's Islamic political system as well as protecting the country from foreign influence. So the IRGC is the Sharia police, basically.
Yeah, aren't they kind of like a fun mix of like actual military group, like you said, kind of secret Sharia police, and all like a kind of Islamic Gestapo?
They're basically the Islamic Gestapo. The interesting thing is when they travel internationally, and I've heard this from people at the very tippy top of international security, that they just fucking get places and get shit-faced and order whores, which is not surprising, I guess.
Right.
But when you're like, when you're the Sharia police. That's like, I don't know, being...
Who watches The Watchmen?
Yeah, I don't know. The team sent by Biden is prepared to lift sanctions on nearly every entity affected by the Executive Order 13876, which was signed by Donald Julius Trump. I think it's Julius. In June of 2019. EO 13876 imposed sanctions on the Supreme Leader of Iran, Ali Khamenei, and the Office of the Supreme Leader of Iran, along with authorizing the imposition of sanctions on others determined to be associated with the Supreme Leader or the Office of the Supreme Leader. Some of the people who were sanctioned under that executive order, Mohsen Rezi, maybe? Rezai?
Yeah.
He was involved in the 94 suicide attacks in Argentina that killed 85 people and is still the deadliest attack in Argentina's history.
Why were Islamists...
Oil.
And,
it's got to be, right?
Like Argentina feels like a random place to be.
Look, man, they fuck them. You know, I actually have no idea. I have to look into that. Ali Akbar Velayati, which is, I mean, that's just an unfortunate first and middle name.
Yeah.
Like you can't yell for that dude in public.
Yeah.
If you're like in the mall and you get split up from this guy, you can't just yell Ali Akbar.
Yeah.
Because white people are like, what the hell? Oh, where's my gun?
That was one of my favorite SNL skits from right after 9/11. It was just like people whose lives were ruined by 9/11. And one of them was like this guy named Al Jazeera for Al Jazeera. He had Al Jazeera Motors.
Oh, that's funny.
Like we don't have any business anymore.
What about the one that Robert De Niro did where it was just like all the weird Islamic sounding names like I shit my drawers and shit like that? He would be so offended by that now.
Yeah.
Can you imagine being offended by shit you did? I would love to do that. Just like if there was a way to make him forget that it was him somehow and then show him what was happening. And he'd be like, oh. And it's like the Masked Singer. You pull the mask off and it's him. And he's like, oh, well, what I meant was this, man. Obviously, I'm not a racist. Like, okay, why don't you apply the same level of charity to everyone else that you just did to yourself, you fucking cunt. Tribeca sucks. Anyways, Brigadier General Hossein Dagan, who led IRGC forces in Lebanon and Syria, when Hezbollah attacked the Marine compound in Beirut in 1983, killing 241 U.S. service members, mostly Marines. And that was the first instance of bomb terrorism.
Yeah.
In the modern world.
241, by the way, is an insane body count.
Yeah.
Have we lost that many people in a single instance of like combat that wasn't like sort of like a nationwide invasion, like going into the entire country of Iraq at the same time? Have we lost anyone that many people in a day since Vietnam? Maybe even not even Vietnam, maybe fucking Korea or World War II.
Of Vietnam, there was some pretty fucking large death counts per day. I think what the fuck is it? Their stupid holiday over there.
Oh, the Tet Offensive.
Yeah, Tet Offensive, yeah. Let's see, I'm looking it up on the Googler. Most of these are World War I, II, and the Civil War.
Right.
Korean War, there was 1,732 people killed. Well, that was over the course of fucking 2 months, man. Come on.
Yeah. I mean, Antietam is the GOAT.
They're doing this by battles and not single days, so I don't know if you can...
Yeah, well, Antietam was both, right? So I think that was like a couple thousand. But still, 240 people would shit their pants. I mean, like people are dunking on the Russians right now for losing like 200, 300 people a day, supposedly, allegedly.
Yeah. Well, here we go. Okay, so the concessions made by Mali will also lift sanctions on Khamenei's personal slush funds, which are known as Bonyads, Bonyads. I don't know what that means. But they include Aston Kud Razavi and execution of Imam Khomeini's order, which confiscated houses and billions from political dissidents and religious minorities. So there's a slush fund apparently that's filled with money and property that not just in Iran but internationally that Khomeini just fucking stole from people.
Right. We were talking about Ibrahim Raisi. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he is known for torturing and killing religious minorities, according to Nirana. In fact, I want to say he killed like a bunch of people at once, like hanging from the forklift, which is like, I don't know why, but that really troubles me more than seeing someone hanged from like a tree or something.
The forklift.
Yeah, like the crane or whatever. That I don't know why. It's just like a weirder, more dystopian version of an execution. But yeah, so like Christians in Iran, for example.
Yeah, there's quite a few. There's a bunch of Zoroastrians and Christians and Jews, actually.
Yeah.
Believe it or not. Banyed Mustafa, blah, blah, blah. I have no idea what his name is. A massive conglomerate that confiscated property from Jews and Baha'is. So there's a bunch of Baha'i faith people there, too. By the way, Rainn Wilson, Dwight Schrute, Baha'i faith.
Really?
Yeah. No idea how the fuck that happened.
That is when Buddhism isn't niche enough anymore.
Yeah. It's like fucking Kabbalah. Lifting these sanctions is odd due to the fact that EO 13 or 13876 was not related to the nuclear program of the JCPOA at all. It was completely separate. It was a direct response to actions taken by Iran and its proxies to destabilize the Middle East, promote international terrorism, and advance Iran's ballistic missile program. So they're capitulating on shit. One, that the agreement they're trying to reinstitute says that you can't capitulate on.
Right.
Like you're not allowed to end sanctions for weapons or terrorism, and that's they're doing that. The EO was signed as a result of Iranian attacks on U.S. military and civilian assets. And it was part and parcel with the Soleimani killing. Along with previously mentioned sanctions being lifted, the concessions also lift sanctions against Iranian economic and financial arms that support Iranian terror, repression, and WMD infrastructure. Some of these entities, such as the economic arms of the...
Mayor, the Iranian language is really like the worst of three worlds,
Yeah,
like the kind of like steppe, almost Russian language, Persian and Arabic, yeah.
Mehrikstad, Ektasad, maybe,
right.
network, some other name, directly fund the Basij Resistance Force, which recruits and trains child soldiers. So that's dope. We're planning on removing those sanctions, I guess. Again, none of that is related to the nuclear program at all, but they're being lifted due to concessions made by Mali, despite Antony Blinken and Robert Malley saying otherwise. Now, this is coming from people inside the State Department.
Yeah, leaking it because they're pissed off about it happening.
And 3 of their top negotiators, again, have completely walked off the job. Other individuals and entities sanctioned under the JCPOA will have all sanctions lifted, despite nearly 100 of them being later sanctioned for terrorism, human rights violations, and participating in Iran's WMD programs.
What does WMD program mean in this situation? Is it chemical or biological, or are they including them like, well, they were working on the nuclear weapons?
It's NBC, nuclear, biological, chemical.
Okay.
But
so,
I don't know specifically.
Right.
I don't know if they make a point of that. Some of the other individuals and entities have been sanctioned, and whose sanctions will now be lifted, include the Gavamine Bank, which was sanctioned in 2018 for supporting the Iranian law enforcement forces that tortured and drowned Afghans. Interesting. Just drowning people, shit.
By the way, that's a good bank to look at, by the way, and see all these banks, because there's just a list of banks, and see which American banks and whatever start working with them, but then we'll like pull out of like, I don't know, like we're taking our name off Kansas City Chiefs or something, you know what I mean? Like we won't sponsor stuff in their stadium anymore.
Yeah. Good. They virtue signal in America and then fucking deal with terrorists
right
internationally.
Dude, it's honestly a bit to go back to the Brittany Griner thing for a second, it's a bit odd to me. I don't know how actually politically active she is, but like if she were to speak out about something that was maybe like wrongfully anti-LGBTQ whatever in America, but then go play in fucking Russia.
Yeah.
That's a bit odd to me.
I mean, you got to get paid, right? I guess.
I chase that paycheck for sure, but yeah, it's interesting to want to go work there.
By the way, it's not just these banks that are full of shit. In 2014, when Russia annexed Donbass and Crimea, Ukraine lost control of some of its oil production, and the destabilization there. Like 2 weeks after that, Shell and Exxon canceled their contracts with the Ukrainian government and then gave those contracts to the Russian government, right? And now last week, Shell's like, "Oh, we're sorry week. We're sorry for buying that oil last week from Russia. We won't do it again." Like, these people are fucking full of shit. The SEPA Bank, or SEPA, the financial linchpin of Iran's missile procurement network, the Central Bank of Iran and National Development Fund, which were both sanctioned for providing funds to the IRGC. Quds Force, Soleimani was the head of Quds Force, and Hezbollah, which is an international terrorist organization.
Yeah, that's just literally a terrorist organization. That's like Al-Qaeda, basically.
Mm-hmm. Although Hezbollah is quite a bit more effective than Al-Qaeda. Now, Al-Qaeda's had bigger individual strikes, but Hezbollah over time is quite a bit more successful. As a matter of fact, they're deeply rooted in South American narco-terrorism as well.
Oh, fun.
Yes. So probably some chance that all the Chinese fentanyl that's making its way through South and Central America is they probably have their hands on that in some way or another. Also sanctions that are going to be lifted, the National Iranian Oil Company and the National Iranian Tanker Company, both of which fund the Quds Force, who are responsible for the deaths of thousands of Syrians and at least 600 Americans. Nearly all of these entities were sanctioned due to funding terrorist groups, yet all of them will have sanctions lifted. The current concessions made by Mali and his team are effectively trying to codify their permanent exemption from sanctions, regardless of their complicity in human rights violations. So this is what people inside the State Department are saying. Not only are these sanctions being rolled back in a manner that's inconsistent with the original agreement, but they're trying to code the language such that they can never be sanctioned again. That is extremely problematic.
So who is that desperate
For oil?
for oil, or to Iran not have a new... Iran releasing 1 million barrels doesn't seem like that's even enough to be desperate for.
No, that's nothing.
Is someone desperate to... Are there people desperate to, get a win foreign policy-wise? Are they just that desperate for Iran to never have a fucking nuke?
I don't know. Israel for sure is, but
Yeah.
I'm not sure if a nuclear Iran is that big of a deal.
Yeah.
Because they've shown... They operate now the way Russia did in the 70s and 80s, like behind the scenes, low key. Mm-hmm. They don't do like big shit like Russia's trying to do over the last 15 years.
And also, they feel, to me, aside from them hating Israel quite a bit more, it feels more like it would be like a nuclear Pakistan.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like their population, we could turn their population pretty easily because it was very pro-Western not too long ago.
Right.
Let's see. All of the previously mentioned entities and individuals were sanctioned due to being indicted for nuclear crimes or terrorism, but the blanket exemptions offered by the current negotiations in Vienna will lift the sanctions placed on them for human rights violations, which have nothing to do with the JCPOA. To remove these sanctions, it would normally be required to prove that the entities are no longer funding terrorist groups, meaning the current attempt to lift the sanctions is technically illegal, also illegal because of the INARA that Congress passed in 2015, where they are required to review any deal.
Right. So with that requiring to review any deal,
Yeah, like at what point?
at what point, and also how do they approve it? Is it just a
That's
straight vote,
Well, no, there's
or is it a committee that approves it?
we do that with I think Brazil we have this thing where we recertify that their government is still actively working against narco-terrorism, and thus we continue to trade with them and shit.
Yeah.
And we have to certify it like every 3 years or 5 years or some shit. I don't know what that entails.
Yeah.
My understanding is that it would be a committee, but
So it wouldn't go to the floor or whatever.
I wouldn't think so. No.
Okay.
I mean, you're not going to have a fucking full House and Senate vote on something like that.
Yeah.
Robert Malley has proposed to the Iranians that the U.S. will remove the IRGC from the foreign terrorist organization list if the
Jeez.
Iranians promise to talk to the U.S. in new negotiations about their terrorist activities.
Just give us a heads up.
So we do negotiate with terrorists, I guess is what you're saying.
Well, that's nothing new.
No. The Iranians, in return, have reportedly refused Malley's offer unless the IRGC is unconditionally removed from the terror list. But regardless of this decision, the IRGC would still have U.S. sanctions against them lifted.
Just so it's easier to pay for whores.
I guess, yeah. Or terrorism.
Yeah.
Just give money to Hezbollah.
And then the celebratory whores after
Yeah,
you.
for sure. In return for doing next to nothing, Iran is set to receive an estimated $90 billion in foreign exchange services, along with over $50 billion a year in extra revenue from petroleum exports. Could be that the U.S. is trying to make a move, like they see the Soviets coming back. They're going to start funneling their oil and natural gas to India and China more. Mm-hmm. And then you need somebody. You can't only have OPEC in the Middle East.
Right.
Like you need some other opposition party to level prices. That's not the worst. That's game theory.
Yeah.
Like, that's economics. You don't want to get into a deal with somebody where you don't have any options. And if we go to OPEC, we're fucked. Now, a more reasonable person might say, well, why don't we just drill our massive oil reserve?
Right.
Why? Like if you're Joe Biden or Al Gore and you're super serial about us being able to get to renewable energy in the next 50 years or so, we're not going to ruin the planet in 50 years. I'm sorry, it's just not when the owner of the largest electric vehicle company on earth is like, hey, we should probably produce more oil of our own. when a guy's saying, hey, this is going to, like, I'm the richest dude in the world, this is probably going to fuck me over, but
Yeah.
please
Do it.
like fuck me over because I don't want to die.
Well,
seems like a good idea.
Although, to be fair, if we do the more energy production like he wants, it would also be a lot more natural gas coming out of the United States, which is the main or one of the main energy grid, whatever.
Yeah.
Like that's what supplies most of the electricity in the United States. So I guess if electricity gets cheaper or more homemade, then maybe that helps Musk. Who knows? But yeah, we should. It is bizarre to me that the main, I guess, avenue that they've been trying to pursue the last 2 or 3 weeks, basically since Ukraine started, was like, it's all right, we're going to get Venezuela and Iran to open up a little bit, instead of just being like, dude, we got to turn the faucet back on.
And they've asked Saudi Arabia to produce more oil now. Even the fucking Wall Street Journal yesterday reported that Saudi Arabia is not returning Joe Biden's phone calls.
Yeah.
That's not a good sign.
They're not interested in putting more oil in the market
Saudi
right now.
Arabia is OPEC.
Yeah.
I mean, for all intents. There's plenty of member states, but they typically run the show there. And to me, the only reasonable option is to increase domestic production, it was working pretty well under Trump. And the only reason that you wouldn't do it is if you're a climate alarmist. And the person that I know that is the smartest on climate and climate policy, Michael Schellenberger, literally has written a book about climate alarmist nonsense.
Yeah.
Like, hey, we have a good shot at getting to renewable energy at some point during our lifetimes, but we're never going to get there like this. And you're just fucking up our economy and security by doing this shit. So in these negotiations, after all this stuff, just removing all these people from the watch list, giving them tons of fucking money, Iran hasn't actually agreed to make any concessions on its ballistic missile programs, any of its terrorist activity or support for proxy groups, or make any guarantees against taking hostages from the U.S. or other countries. The U.S. has gotten nothing in return from all the concessions made by Mali. The JCPOA sunset has not been extended, and the UN arms embargo has already expired. So any meaningful restrictions will expire in 9 years. It would seem that Trump was probably right about the JCPOA being a poorly negotiated deal, and it's getting worse now. I mean, this is it's weakness. Even if you feel like we've got to do this to settle relations with Iran and get more oil on the market, even if you feel like that way, this is not the way to do it. Like, if you're the president of the United States, you are the head of a fucking mafia organization. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you show weakness, people will attack you. And that's all Biden has done. From the pullout in Afghanistan to letting our border get overrun, pretty much everything he's been involved in, including Ukraine, by the way, everything has just been pussy bullshit. And it's funny because that was his two main things when running for president are, we're going to get the adults back in charge.
Right.
By adults, I guess he meant senile geriatrics. But the other part was his foreign policy chops. Like, I've been in government I know these people. I've dealt with these people. Like, all right, cool, we'll do it. Do it. I want to know.
It's weird to me, by the way. So the guy, Mali's the same guy that negotiated the first one?
Yeah. Now he's like,
what happened?
God, who the fuck knows, dude?
Right.
I mean, he's like, you have to believe he had some say in the provision that none of these sanctions for WMD or terrorism or human rights violations would ever be removed. He had to have some say in that if he's the lead negotiator. And now he's going completely against that shit. I want to know the functional difference between the Russian government and the Iranian government, or Saudi Arabian, or Venezuelan, right? Like, none of these are good people.
No.
Are we pretending? Is it because Iran and Saudi Arabia and Venezuela are brown people, so it's okay for them to do shit? I'm serious about this. Like, you have to wonder about the psychology behind this, because it doesn't make any strategic sense for us.
I would say the simplest answer is Russia has something the other three don't.
Which is what?
Nuclear weapons.
Maybe.
I mean, it wouldn't. Whatever's happening right now in Ukraine wouldn't begin to happen if Russia didn't have nukes.
Yeah, but Russia doesn't attack us, and Iran does on a regular basis.
Right.
So, I don't know. It's an interesting thought experiment. Frankly, I don't know that there's that much of a difference between the Russian and Ukrainian governments. I mean, I know that the legacy media thinks this dude is fucking Jesus, but
Zelensky.
yeah, he's Medvedchuk, the opposition party leader.
Yeah,
who's not really pro-Russian so much because he's fighting against him now, but like pro-Russian.
Is that the guy who was the president before him, who they keep putting on CNN?
That's Poroshenko.
Okay, yeah.
I'll get to him in a sec. But Medvedchuk has been fined and arrested and all kinds of shit, like, over and over since Zelensky came into power. He's just trying to get rid of him. Same thing with Poroshenko. He's been trying to put Poroshenko in jail for terrorism because he sold oil to the regions in Ukraine that Russia controlled. Like, fucking dude, what am I supposed to do? Like, not make money? And then Poroshenko's since early 2019, he's been trying to put him in jail. And just 2 weeks before the invasion, he's under house arrest right now.
Poroshenko came back into the country for the invasion, I believe.
Well, he came back in and they put him on house arrest.
Yeah.
But then I think they let him out to go pretend to fight.
Yeah. He's on CNN a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, the difference would just be, they're obviously sketchy and corrupt and probably assholes, but
they're not imperialist.
They're not imperialist.
Yeah.
However shitty Zelensky is, he doesn't have the bodies that Putin has.
Not yet. I mean, he's only been in office for 2 years.
That's fair, but like, he doesn't have them.
He's in the past 6 months, he's shut down 3 opposition television stations.
Yeah,
that's who you're dealing with. That's I just want people to be very clear about who this guy is before you start lionizing him and pretending like he's some fucking warrior good dude. He's not. He's a piece of shit. Like, Putin's just a bigger piece of shit.
Right.
And we've made the mistake over and over and over again in the United States of picking the lesser piece of shit and giving him a bunch of money and guns. And this time he's got a whole brigade of fucking Nazis on his team. Are we really doing this shit again? Like, I mean, the chances of any of the, even the more sectarian groups in Ukraine like that, Azov or whatever battalion or brigade, becoming radicalized to the point that they're doing international terrorism seems pretty low.
Right.
Right. At least blowback on us. Man, but fucking, I am so tired of, because now I can see all of it at once. It's like I'm looking at the third dimension from the fourth, and I can see all the time.
Yeah.
And I see us arming all these people in Vietnam and fighting them, and then arming all these people in Afghanistan and fighting them. Like, God damn it, are we really going to do this again? Fuck, man. Like, what do you think, when we send all these fucking weapons to Ukraine and they get overrun, now what?
I mean, I don't think they're going to get overrun just because I don't think there's enough Russian troops there to do it.
He doesn't have the money. If he had the money, what he would really do is he would take the entire coastline and make Ukraine landlocked.
Right.
He would push a little bit north of Crimea because they have a problem in Crimea getting clean drinking water. But there's a delta up there that you can use. And I think he would just take that whole thing right here.
Yeah.
All the way down the coastline of Ukraine.
And he wouldn't hold, but he would still does want to take Kiev for symbolic
For like a
reasons.
moral victory, I guess. Yeah. And then give it. I think he wants to take Kiev just so he can give it back.
Right.
You know what I mean? But either way, Putin's a cunt. Zelensky's a cunt. Putin's a bigger one, right? He's a bit of a madman.
I would say just several magnitudes bigger, but this is also what Russia always does. This is like, and I suppose maybe that's scarier from a historical perspective. Every 50 years, they try to assert themselves as like the new big boy on the block.
But they have no fucking. They're like the Cleveland Cavaliers. They won one.
Yeah.
But it was only fucking circumstance. Like, you happen to have the best player on the planet at the time.
Right.
And that's it. And you couldn't even win the 7 years prior with that dude.
Right. And also, the best defender on the other team kept kicking people in the dick.
Well, he did. LeBron was fucking with him, I guess. Anyways, I don't know how this is all going to play out. I think it's super weird that Russia's been deeply involved in these talks with Iran. Like, so you take it all at service value and you remove the players from it. You think about U.S. and Iran and then even the European oil market and how that might all work. It does make sense for the U.S. to try to calm down somebody that might be a problem. It makes sense to try to get them involved in the international market in exchange for not doing terrorism.
Right.
And it also makes sense when you have a player up north in Russia trying to fuck around with energy to have another source that isn't just OPEC in that region. All that makes sense. But then you add Russia and the country that's probably going to be buying most of their energy soon, China, to the negotiations. How does that work?
I
honestly don't understand.
Are they forced to use the Security Council?
Maybe, but why would where's France and Germany?
So actually, Germany is the plus.
Germany's
I saw the
so it's France, England, Germany, China, and Russia doing this?
Yeah.
Plus Iran and the U.S.
Yes.
I don't understand Russia or China's involvement. Like, if I was Russia, I would be like, fuck you guys. I'm not doing this. Although if Russia's there leading Mali around by the nose and making him do all this stupid shit, then, I mean, you got to know. So
there's probably, I guess, some advantage too of just in general, whether you're leading someone around by the nose or not, just kind of being in the room.
Yeah, knowing what's going on. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, they've got to know that it's very unlikely that a Democrat is in office in 2025. Probably likely there would be a populist Republican of some sort who's immediately going to say, fuck all of this.
Right.
So maybe they're playing a long game. I don't know.
I think they prefer that. I actually think not even just a populist or then a weak Democrat, but I think like an ideal situation for the Russians and Chinese is that they keep two-term presidents to a minimum.
Probably, yeah. I mean, chaos is good. American chaos is good for them politically, for sure.
Yeah.
Keeps us from making big moves. Well, we'll see what happens. We'll fucking see. I don't know. I don't know what the fuck's going on.
It is a weird. This is like when you're playing Total War and you don't understand what the AI is doing.
Yeah. And then you're dead.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you can't figure out what the enemy's doing, then you're in trouble, in my opinion. But, we'll see what happens. Man. We'll have more about this later in the week. We'll see.